On This Week in Enterprise Tech, we have Mr. Brian Chee, Mr. Curtis Franklin here today, and we talk about how cybersecurity is a top priority in a lot of organizations, but unfortunately, a lot of the candidates for the job just don't meet the bar. Plus, Google's back in the news, and they're about to settle on federal gender and race discrimination charges. We have a great discussion on that. Plus, we also have a great guest, Don Schuerman. He's the CTO of Pega, and we discussed the complexity of software and services and just how automation can break it all down for your organization. Shouldn't miss it. TWiT on the set. Our annual survey is going strong. We don't want to miss your feedback. Go to twit.tv/survey21 to take it now before it closes on February 8th. The survey helps us understand our audience so we can make your listening experience even better. It'll only take a few minutes. Go to twit.tv/survey21 to take it.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is TWiT, This Week in Enterprise Tech, episode 429, recorded February 5th, 2021. Has software become too complex? This episode of This Week in Enterprise Tech is brought to you by IT Pro TV. Get a new career in IT with the best IT education around. Visit itpro.tv/enterprise for an additional 30% off all consumer subscriptions with a lifetime of your active subscription. Use code ENTERPRISE30 at checkout. Welcome to TWiT, This Week in Enterprise Tech, the show that is dedicated to you, the enterprise professional, the IT pro, and that geek who just wants to know how this world's connected. I'm your host, Louis Maresca, your guide through this big, giant world of the enterprise. But I can't guide you by myself. I need to bring in the professionals, the experts in their field, starting with our very own Mr. Brian Chee. He's not only our network and IT pro, but he's also our happy traveler. How's the move coming, Chee?
We are waiting on pins and needles to get word from the moving company on when we're going to do the final pickup. If all goes well, we will be actually in the air. We should be in Orlando this time next week. So that ought to be interesting.
You guys a little nervous there with the whole change of scenery, or are you ready?
I think we're ready, but yeah, nervous is thinking, have we forgotten anything?
Well, hopefully the new owners will, won't dig up your skeletons in the backyard, and you should be good.
Yeah. Well, hey, we know the new owners are dying to move in. They already have their mail coming here.
That's their message to you to get out, Chee. So, hurry up with that.
We have to be out by the 16th, and closing's on the 22nd.
Fantastic. Well, good luck with the move. Well, speaking of professionals, we also have Mr. Curtis Franklin here today. He is a senior analyst at Omdia and a permanent resident of the Sunshine State. Curtis, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing fine. We're not going anywhere. We're enjoying life here in the Sunshine State. Looking forward to having a couple of new residents soon, but in the meantime, trying to keep up with everything going on in the world of cybersecurity and seeing just how we can help the good guys stay at least a half step ahead of the bad guys.
Indeed. Well, speaking of that, we've had quite the week in the enterprise and IT world, so we should definitely get into the news. Now, cybersecurity is a top priority of a lot of organizations out there. Unfortunately, many candidates for those jobs just don't meet the bar. We'll talk about the on-the-job training and why things are really falling short there. Plus, Google's back in the news, and it sounds like they're all about settling on a federal gender and race discrimination charge, or several charges there. We'll get into the details of that. Plus, we have a great guest, Don Schuerman. He's the CTO of Pega, and he's going to discuss the complexity of software and services and just how automation could actually break it all down. Well, before we get into all that, we have to jump into this week's news blips. Now, it wouldn't be an enterprise week without hearing about ransomware victims, but this week is a bit different. We get to talk about a cybercrime group that's throwing in the towel to all of their operations. That's right. The cybercrime group behind the Phonics Crypter ransomware has announced on Twitter that they've deleted the ransomware's source code and plan to shut down their operations. What do you think? Is it a ruse? Well, as a gesture of goodwill towards past victims, the FonixCrypter gang also has released a package containing a decryption tool, how-to instructions, and the ransomware's master decryption key. Now, I can't help but think this is an elaborate plan to get authorities off their scent. We'll have to see. Maybe I've seen too many movies, but we'll have to see about that. Now, former infected users can use these files to decrypt and recover their files for free without paying for the decryption key. Now, Alan, this guy, he's a security researcher for threat intelligence firm Recorded Future, tested a decryptor and verified that FonixCrypter app instructions and master key work as advertised. Now, the important thing here is that they included the master key, which actually enables someone to build a much better decryption tool than the one that's there already. In fact, a better tool is currently in the works at Microsoft, and is expected to actually release soon. Now, prior to the shutting down, FonixCrypter ransomware gang has been active since at least June 2020. Now, the crew had removed his Telegram channel just recently where they usually advertise the ransomware to other criminal groups. Still, analysts also pointed out that the group also announced plans to open a new channel shortly. Wonder what they're going to be doing there. I don't know about you, but any cybercrime group that claims they've been reformed is more theatrics than reality.
Bug hunters and those bounties have hit a new high. Google paid $6.7 million in reward money last year to security researchers from around the world who found vulnerabilities in Chrome, Android, and other Google technologies. That amount is the highest Google has paid out under its Vulnerability Research Program, or VRP, since launching it in 2010. In fact, the award money it paid in 2020 is almost double the $3.4 million it paid bug hunters in 2019. Researchers who disclosed vulnerabilities in Chrome collected about 1/3 of the total reward money that Google handed out last year, and that represented an 83% increase over what the company paid for Chrome bug discoveries in 2019. Now, in July of 2019, the company tripled the minimum amount available under the Chrome VRP from $5,000 to $15,000. It also bumped up the maximum award for high-quality bug reports with exploits from $15,000 to $30,000. In addition to awards for vulnerability discovery, Google also rewarded researchers who reported what the company describes as abuse risks in its products. For example, Google points to methods that would allow someone to manipulate the ratings of a Google Maps listing by submitting a large enough number of fake reviews. Google said it received twice as many abuse risk reports in 2020 than it did in 2019. Now, according to a list that HackerOne released last year, looking at the top bug bounty programs on its platform, many large companies are benefiting from this sort of program. Between February 2014, when HackerOne published its list, in June 2020, Verizon, for instance, had paid more than $9.4 million in rewards to security researchers and resolved over 5,200 reports it received from them. Other companies on HackerOne's top bug bounty program list include Intel, Twitter, and GitLab.
So, our new president is not losing any time. And this president, number 46, Joe Biden, is finally going to get behind the Artemis program for our first colony on the moon. This story was updated on this Thursday at 12:30 Eastern. And the White House report basically said, through the Artemis program, the United States will work with industry and international partners to send astronauts to the surface of the moon, another man and woman on the moon, which is very exciting, conduct new and exciting science, prepare for future missions to Mars, and demonstrate America's values. To date, only 12 humans have walked on the moon. That was half a century ago. The Artemis program, a waypoint to Mars, provides the opportunity to add numbers to that. Lunar exploration has broad and biometrical support in Congress, most recently detailed in the fiscal year 2021 omnibus spending bill, and certainly they support that effort. Now, I'd like to point out that the original moon program proposed by President Kennedy during the Rice University speech was political in nature, but became an economic engine, developing a huge number of technologies as spin-offs, which also became the name of one of NASA's annual reports. What encourages me about this program getting support is that we potentially could have another innovation renaissance as technologies are created to build out Artemis, which is proposed as a foundation for an eventual lunar colony. So while I'm sadly now too old to be a loony, I say best wishes from a taxpayer that is in favor of an effort to get to the moon and beyond.
Now, when we hear about ransomware attacks, we usually think about two outcomes, right? Victims either pay the ransom and get their data back, or they restore a backup and try and secure themselves from getting hit again. Now, in both cases, the IT and security crews have to get to work to plug all the holes that allowed the cybercrime groups to get in the first place. What if they forgot to do the second part? Well, then it would be a cautionary tale provided by the UK's National Cybersecurity Centre, and the unnamed company that we're talking about here fell victim to a ransomware attack and paid millions of Bitcoin to restore the network and retrieve the files. However, the company just left it at that, failing to actually analyze how the cyber criminals infiltrated the network in the first place. And I bet you can guess it. That's right. That's something that they came back to actually haunt them when the same ransomware game infected their network with the same ransomware less than 2 weeks later. And the company ended up paying a ransom a second time. The organization actually paid £6.5 million to get their files back, and they just left it at that. Now, if you're willing to pay out a ransom, do yourself a favor. Do the work to ensure it never happens again.
Attackers are continuing to nibble at the security of Apple's iOS. According to a researcher with Kaspersky, 3 vulnerabilities in Apple's mobile software could be used to power drive-by download attacks and chained to exploit either iPhones or iPads. Last week, Apple released an update to fix the 3 vulnerabilities, one in the kernel used by iOS and iPadOS, and 2 in the WebKit browser library, noting that the company had reports of the issues already being actively exploited. While Kaspersky revealed no details on how the exploits are being used, the fact that 2 vulnerabilities are in the basic software used to power the Safari browser means the attack surface is quite large. Apple's iPhone and iPad products are regularly targeted by attackers, and in addition, commercial spyware providers have incorporated exploits for Apple's mobile operating systems purchased from the gray market to allow the governments of smaller nations to conduct zero-click attacks. While users of Android devices need to beware of malicious files and may want to consider running anti-malware solutions, users of Apple's mobile operating systems need to worry most about fileless attacks, such as drive-by downloads, which the current vulnerabilities would allow, says Kaspersky researcher Viktor Chebyeshev. Kaspersky advised all users to make sure their devices are updated to iOS and iPadOS version 14.4. In addition to keeping devices updated, Chebyeshev recommends that companies require the use of virtual private networks, deploy two-factor authentication, and train employees to spot phishing attacks and avoid risky behavior. For example, users should make sure to use Touch ID and Face ID, not leave their device by itself, and avoid clicking on links in spam and social media.
Well, I've got some absolutely electric news. A year and a half after Amazon announced that it would buy 100,000 electric trucks to reduce its carbon footprint, Amazon says it's begun using prototype vehicles for real-world deliveries in Los Angeles. Amazon expects to spend a few more months testing the vehicles before the start of mass production later this year. Amazon placed a massive order with Rivian, a startup that has raised billions of dollars to build electric trucks, and Amazon is a Rivian investor. Rivian has designed a skateboard electric truck platform that can be used to build a wide variety of vehicles. Rivian is aiming to begin deliveries of its flagship pickup truck, the R1T, and the R1S SUV later this year. Last-mile delivery trucks are a good application for electric vehicles because trucks tend to drive a relatively short distance with lots of stopping and starting. Amazon says the new Rivian delivery trucks have a range of 150 miles. Amazon says it has started getting its buildings ready to accommodate the new fleet of vehicles and has installed thousands of electric vehicle charging stations as delivery stations across North America and Europe. Well, this move is right in line with how Amazon and others are also using pedal-powered delivery bikes and small electric tuk-tuk-like delivery trikes in various cities around the world. I must say I've started hearing reports of them in London and Paris. Well, with GM and other major vehicle manufacturers vowing to migrate away from the internal combustion engine, look for changes in how the IT side of the shop also changes with smart roadways and other follow-on technologies to support the changing last mile of the delivery world.
So the browser is where most people live when they're on the devices, whether it's portals, email, social networks, or content sites. You sit in the browser the majority of your day. Now, most of you actually use Chrome at around 64% of the worldwide browser market share. Now, what browser do you think is the #1 target of cyber criminals? Well, I bet it isn't tough to guess there. This past week, Google released information about a zero-day attack on the browser that was actually reported to them on January 24th. Now, it's typical of Google to limit details of the vulnerability until a majority of the users are actually updated with the fix. However, the development comes weeks after Google and Microsoft disclosed attacks carried out by North Korea hackers against security researchers with an elaborate social engineering campaign to actually install a Windows backdoor. Now, some researchers infected simply by visiting a fake research blog on fully patched systems running Windows 10 and Chrome browser. Now, Microsoft actually published a report on January 29th about it. And in the report, it hinted that the attackers likely leveraged a Chrome zero-day to compromise the systems. Sound familiar? Well, that means the browser's vulnerability has been used in the wild quite often. Now, the good thing is Google released Chrome 88 43 24 150 for Windows, Mac, and Linux with a fix for the heap buffer overflow flaw called the CVE 2021-21-148. Now, it's that buffer overflow is a fix in its V8 JavaScript rendering engine. Now, with zero-day attacks coming in Chrome both in October and November, and now this one in January, it's safe to say Chrome engineers need to keep on their toes. The world depends on it. Well, folks, that does it for the blips. Next up, the Bytes. But before we get to the Bytes, we have to thank a really great sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech, and that's IT Pro TV. Now, technology is constantly changing, and so is the skill set required to thrive in it. In fact, we're going to get into the impact of those requiring skills in the next Bytes or so. But the tech industry is rapidly expanding, and the demand for IT skills in the workforce is growing as well. And an IT career can be rewarding and have longevity, which is something we can all use in our working lives, right? Well, IT Pro TV is where it's at. They don't just teach you IT skills. They teach you the skills that are in demand. You want to be valuable to your future employers, and you will with your IT Pro TV account. Now, IT Pro TV tells you what those jobs are and how to get certified for them. Now, one of the best things about IT Pro TV is their wonderful teaching style. Now, they have 7 studios where they teach you the ins and outs of IT that's entertaining and fun. Now, going through all their courses personally, I can honestly say I retained a ton of information because the training content is entertaining and it's practical. In fact, one reviewer said, "This site has helped me with 2 certifications and also as the supplemental material for my grad school classes." Give it a try. You won't be disappointed. Now, get the certifications you need, all from the safety and comfort of your own home. You'll be able to learn at your own pace and schedule. And with over 5,800 hours of IT training available to stream, you'll find the right content that fits your educational goals. February is Project Management Month at IT Pro TV. They'll have a webinar live on February 11th and on demand thereafter called Navigating the Future of Project Management. They have courses on PMP, ITIL, Service Management, and Agile. Now, you get training in Microsoft, Cisco, Apple, Linux, and more. And they also are the only official video training partner of CompTIA. You can get one of their learning coaches along with their wonderful job resources to help you guide on your own career path. And you'll always be supported with IT Pro TV's amazing team. Now, for more insight about IT, check out their podcast, TechNado, with Don Pezzett. He's actually featuring industry guests and IT news recaps for a deeper dive into the IT realm. Get a new career in IT with the best IT education around. Go to itpro.tv/enterprise and use code enterprise30 to receive 30% off all consumer subscriptions. That's itpro.tv/enterprise and use code enterprise30 for an additional 30% off the lifetime of your active subscription. IT Pro TV, build or expand your IT career and enjoy the journey. And we thank IT Pro TV for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Well, folks, it's now time for the news bites, and we have a couple good ones this week. Becoming a cybersecurity professional requires more than class education. Like the normal classical education is not going to help you here. Now, many of you might argue that's not true, but what is happening is that many professionals in the SOCs, in those security operations centers, are finding that in order to keep up with all the evolving challenges, they need to learn more on the job. Sounds familiar? Well, sometimes they don't learn fast enough or even deep enough. And the broad amount of technology and attack surfaces is causing a deficit in knowledgeable security personnel. Now, half of the cybersecurity professionals do not believe they are prepared to respond to a cyber attack, with both lack of skills and training as the fault. Now, while the majority of respondents of a recent survey says 58% said that they most likely felt most comfortable with the level of their technical cyber defense skills. Now, the interesting part of the stat is that the professionals in the Enterprise Security Operations Center were least confident in two essential skill areas for detecting intruders. Number one, being network monitoring, and number two, intrusion detection, with 42% and 45% respectively. Now, considering those skills ready, according to the survey, of more than 100 cybersecurity professionals within 17 countries. Now, there's a great quote that is an analog to all of these scenarios, which is, with every sports team, if you don't train as a team, there's no way that they'll be able to be agile and work together at game time. Well, that definitely applies here, because cybersecurity professionals' training regimen in enterprise SOCs remains a problem, especially because the demand for cybersecurity professionals remains high. Now, in April, JobsBoardIndeed.com saw posting for technology and cybersecurity professionals drop actually 30%. However, these categories did better overall in the market during the pandemic, accounting for 11% greater share of the postings positions. Unfortunately, the industry has not done a good job here of building up programs to build the skills of SOC workers on the job. Training typically only improves skills needed to do the current work and does not add any new skills, especially those needed during attacks. Training has to change, for sure. All right, let's bring in my co-host, because this is a big topic. I mean, obviously, you guys work in security and you've done security for a long time. Curtis, is the case of just more training, maybe even just scenario-based training, and maybe add in a case study or two for an analysis, really what's going to help professionals here? The reports seem to call out that organizations need to learn more on the job in the future in order to do better. Is the training going to really help, or is it need something else?
Well, I think that this notion of on-the-job training is one of the reasons that many companies look at things like capture the flag exercises and competitions as a solid way of seeing a candidate build their resume. When I talk to the companies and ask them, what kind of credentials do you want? Which magic string of letters behind someone's name really makes you want to hire them? The answer typically is none of them. What they really want to see is that someone has been active and understands security. These live games, the capture the flags that are so popular at things like B-Sides and DEF CON and all of the other conferences that, if we struggle, we can remember having happened in the past. Those are critical because they show that someone actually understands what's going on and can apply it. The problem that the companies have is that even if they swept up everyone who participated in those competitions, the demand for skilled professionals is much higher than the talent pool of skilled professionals. And so the companies are left to do their own training. And as they would happily tell you, trying to train using these exercises that are typically run by a third party is awfully darned pricey. There just isn't a good, cheap way to solid cybersecurity talent.
Right. I agree. I think, Chubert, I want to throw this to you because you've been in many knocks and socks before. And were the skilled professionals there, were they skilled because they just had good training?
Actually, the skilled professionals that I've worked with have almost always, been educated in the College of Hard Knocks. There's nothing quite like experience on actually doing things. But let me diverge just a little bit. I recently had a conversation with with one of my relatives' sons, and he had this idea that he could actually become a cybersecurity specialist simply by taking classes. And I said, no. Classwork is basically just a starting point. I told him you need to get involved. You need to go and do some exercises. Now, the reality is one thing, the message I try to tell anyone trying to get started is cybersecurity is not a field of study. It is not a subset of the IT world. It is a superset. I have run into all too many cybersecurity specialists, quote unquote, that don't even understand how things like VLANs work, or they don't understand other than the very smallest portion of how VPN works. They don't understand how different encryption methodologies work and which ones are better than others. You know, I've actually run into some that they thought they had a nice secure network, and I said, well, I just rewrote your configuration on one of your switches by using your SNMP right community string that was still right. So my end of this rant is cybersecurity specialists need to be involved up to their elbows in all portions of the IT world. My big thing with my lab is I used to teach my students using the ISO 7-layer model as my syllabus. While I didn't want them to make a living at running cables, I wanted them to understand what it looks like, what it feels like, how it works, so that they know when they can recognize things like taps. They can recognize things like spans ports, all the other things that make up cybersecurity that is all too often ignored. Because the cybersecurity people, some of the cybersecurity people I've worked with in the past, this has been beneath them. So I think my advice to anyone is get your hands dirty, folks. It's all part of the learning process.
Indeed, it is indeed. Curtis, I want to throw this back to you because I think there's been some points here where it also means that a lot of cybersecurity professionals, they can learn on the job, they can learn in the school of hard knocks, but in the same sense, sometimes they need leaders. They need leaders to help drive them in the right direction, to focus on the different facets of cybersecurity. Especially each organization's different. They all have different setups and infrastructure, and so there needs some kind of direction sometimes. They might be able to do the work fairly quickly, but they need direction and need to be able to understand the focus areas. What do you think organizations should be doing here? Do they need to be also looking into hiring better leaders in this area?
Well, I think the better leaders are certainly something that companies want to have on board. And here they get into a fascinating question, and that is, for a great cybersecurity leader, do you necessarily look for a great cybersecurity researcher? And often the answer is no. Cybersecurity researchers can have some very, very specific talents, some very, very specific mindsets. And let's be honest, in some cases, I don't want to overgeneralize, but the qualities required to be a leader and the qualities required to be a great cybersecurity researcher have a fairly small slice in the middle of the Venn diagram where they overlap. Curiously, the cybersecurity leadership is one of those areas where I hear people say that some of the certifications are valuable. People, when they're looking at cybersecurity architects and managers and even CISOs, like to see things like CISSP on the tail end of someone's name on their resume. And that's because in order to get those certifications, you have to show that you understand how the security is going to be part of the business. And that's really the key to leadership in cybersecurity. Understanding the business problems to be solved, understanding the business interests to be protected, and then giving guidance to your technical staff on how to do that. So yes, I do think that companies need to hire and grow better cybersecurity leaders. They want to do that, but it is in many ways a completely different problem set than exists in finding or growing good cybersecurity pros.
Right. It's true. Well, hopefully the market will catch up. This is one of those things that we know the market continues to I would say to move into a specific trend. And I think the trend is that it's starting to learn how to train, and it's starting to learn how to coach, especially remote leaders. I think that's one of the biggest things I'm seeing is a lot of organizations are moving to this remote, and they know they're going to have to move and train more individuals to be leaders, even organically grow them up in their organizations. So they might have the security skills, but they don't necessarily have all the leadership skills, especially the remote leadership skills. So I think I'm starting to see that more with a lot of organizations out there, and hopefully that will help with this as well. Well, folks, that does it for that bite. Let's move on to the next bite, because Google is back in the news, and it sounds like they're in a bit of trouble, but they seem to be settling on a recent federal gender and race discrimination charge. Chee, do you want to take us through that one?
Well, the bottom line is Google has, this is not the first one. Google has actually had a few of these. This one just happens to be 3.8 million, but that's over 5,500 employees. So the bottom line on this story is saying it's going to work out to about $400.14 per person. Now, there is an undercurrent that I'm not going to read the story. Everybody can read. The undercurrent we're having here is Google is a really, really young company. I've been on to their campus a couple of times, and several of my students work there. Now, pardon me if I'm maybe stereotyping a little bit, but the younger managers typically didn't learn how to be a manager. They typically rose to that level because they were successful at whatever they did. So the unfortunate thing is there's a lot of these kids that don't have real management training. They've never really had the how do you really truly do an equal opportunity job interview. I've actually worked with some of these people and said, how do you score the interviewees? I go, oh, we just kind of scribble notes. I go, you don't work out a scoring sheet based on your minimum qualifications and your desired qualifications and share them with all the interviewers so that you have a common grading criteria? What a concept. So while the whole concept of gender and race or ethnic background, I think is probably a better description, discrimination, I think the underlying problem is training. I saw this time and time again in the university setting. Principal investigators tend to be researchers, and they're most of the time very, very good at doing research, but they stink at being managers. My wife hated being a manager, but she was really, really good at it. I admitted very, very early on, even though I had, I think, almost 200 people under me when I was with the federal government, that I wasn't a good manager. I was a good team lead. And you really and truly need to understand the difference. human resource departments need to take the bull by the horns, and these youngsters need the training. They don't know how to do correct interviews. They don't really understand the equal opportunity hiring laws. And I think that's the undercurrent that needs to change at Google, even though, yeah, I agree with some people in the audience that, yeah, this kind of story pisses me off too. But we need to look at the underlying problem. And the generation that are now becoming managers need to learn how to be managers. So, Lou, chime in. What do you think? Is this kind of a problem being seen at Microsoft? I'm not sure if you can comment on that, but I'm sure you've got a comment.
Yeah, well, you've seen. I mean, there's a public news about the internal threads about that had to deal with women who were feeling like they were being discriminated against. I think this is a big wake-up call for a lot of companies that that need. You're right. Like, they need to train better. They need to make sure that they have they train their leaders as well as all the individual team members in inclusiveness and ensuring diversity in teams. And I think that is a super important thing for any company. And I think that most companies are realizing that. Like, I think Google's gotten a huge wake up call here, and I'm hoping that they start moving forward with getting to more of a good place in this area. I think having a diverse team and making sure everyone's heard is important for any successful business. I mean, it's a proven piece of fact and it's a proven piece of data that shows businesses and organizations are just do better if you have if everyone's heard and everyone's included and everyone's voice is out there and everyone gets paid equally and all of that stuff. And I think that this is one of the important things. And in fact, my team personally, we go through a lot of this training, and we not only that, we have very diverse teams that we just are really effective teams. The Office team is one of those teams that's just so effective in engineering and in problem solving, critical thinking because of that. So I think that, like I said, a lot of organizations have the problem, and it's just what they do with that and how they evolve is the really important thing.
So,
Curtis,
Mr. Curt, what do you think? $3.8 million for a lawsuit like this doesn't sound like a lot, especially when it's spread over 5,500 people. You want to comment on that, and maybe if you've seen a little bit from dealing with international managers?
Yeah, it's first of all, the size of the award is it's a meaningless award for Google. I mean, this is the corporate equivalent of finding change in the sofa cushions, but it does put down the legal statement that there's an issue. So here's what I think is one of the issues, and this is something that many companies are still trying to deal with, and that is that there are a certain percentage of managers that become managers not because they show any particular skill or talent at managing, but because that's the only way the company can reward them for being good engineers or developers or researchers or whatever. And figuring out how to reward someone for being a good technical professional without turning them into a bad manager is a problem that companies have been wrestling with forever. So, I think that's a piece of it. Now, you mentioned the international aspect. This is something that the company I work for, corporation is called Informa, is working with. And in the past 6 to 8 months, there have been a number of programs put forward to develop managers, to help people be good remote managers, that's to Lou's point, and also to develop programs that allow professionals to be solid subject matter experts, solid subject professionals without having to become a manager in order to be rewarded. In other words, let the people who can manage, let the people who can do the technical job do the technical job, and figure out a way to appropriately reward each of them. It's not a small issue. It's a huge issue that crosses all kinds of corporate lines. And it's going to be wonderful when some company somewhere finally figures it out.
Well, that was, yeah. And our technical director was saying he had to move his microphone because he's yelling it in. Yeah, this is something that raises a lot of temperatures, and I'm certainly going to take an aspirin after this. It will raise the hackles on lots and lots of people, and I'm going to say to any Google people that are listening, use it as a lesson. I had to go through this. We had a lot of this kind of problem in the federal government. Getting promoted to the level of your incompetence, unfortunately, is all too common. And while we may poo-poo the ivory tower has done some pretty good jobs on training people about human resource management. And maybe, just maybe, we all need to kind of take a step back and say, hey, let's go and make sure that just because you're female or just because you're a minority doesn't mean we value you any less. And to our viewers, yeah, we value you no matter what color you are. If you're green, that's fine too. Anyway, Lou, I think I better give the mic back to you because I'm getting silly.
We definitely accept the green as well. Well, folks, that does it for the Bytes. Thank you, guys. That was great. This is my favorite part of the show, though, where we get to drop some knowledge on the TWiT Ride. We get to bring in a guest to drop some knowledge. And today we have Don Schuerman. He is the CTO of Pega. Don, welcome to the show.
Great to be here. It's nice. I'm here to provide a Schuerman to the Peabody that I see on the mic over there. So.
Fantastic. And I promise we won't talk about little green men anymore. We'll get into some more.
That's great.
So Don, our audience loves to hear people's origin stories. So let's start with that. Maybe you can take us on a short journey through tech and what brought you to Pega.
Sure. So I have a double major in physics and philosophy. And when I graduated from college, that wasn't a job opening that was out there. But I did have a bunch of years working at the help desk and turned that into a job actually at Pega, working in support. And from there, I've moved from support. I spent a number of years doing delivery and actually implementing projects at our clients. I spent years in the engineering department, actually writing code. People kind of learned that I had a side hustle as an improv comic and wasn't afraid of getting up in front of groups of people. So that led to jobs in technical sales, and then ultimately leading a lot of our global technical sales and global field engineering functions. And after a number of years of being introduced to people as the CTO, they actually made me the CTO. So that's been my journey. It's kind of it's unique in the sense that I've really kind of grown up inside of one organization, but I've been able to work with great people. I love the culture, and we work with a demanding and exciting set of clients, so it makes each day interesting.
Fantastic. I'm a big fan of Pega. I've followed them since the early 90s. And being a software and services guy, I noticed recently Pega started this narrative. They started recently discussing the, quote, crushing complexities of software. Can you maybe take us through what that means and what you guys are doing about it?
Yeah, so our marketing people will be glad to hear that you've picked up on that narrative. I think it's about the fact that so much of what we do for our clients, and our clients are big organizations. So, organizations like Citibank, JP Morgan Chase, the U.S. Census Bureau. And what we help those organizations do is really cut through the complexity, especially in their processes, the processes that do things like how they onboard new customers, how they do service processing, how they handle fulfillment of various orders. So we use automation capabilities to really streamline those, make them easier for the employees who are working on them, and also easier for the customer at the other end. And then we also help them better engage their customers. So we use a form of real-time decisioning certain categories of AI, so things like machine learning, predictive analytics, to do real-time analysis of what the right conversation to have with the customer is. And that might be a conversation around the right offer, the right product to put in front of them. It might just be a conversation around education on a product, or a simple, hey, I noticed it's your birthday, happy birthday. But we use that to drive better and deeper relationships for our clients with their customers. So that idea of helping to simplify both the processes, but also the way in which our clients engage with their customers.
It makes sense. Now we've talked with a lot of guests. We've looked into a lot of research into like robotic automation and a lot of these different automation processes. Can you tell us a little bit about when you say intelligent automation and workflow automation? What are you referring to, and how is that working for organizations?
Yeah. The industry is throwing all kinds of new automation terms out there. Gartner's been driving a whole thread around hyper automation. Intelligent automation is out there. At the end of the day, I think this is about combining a number of different technologies. So, traditional automation technologies like business process management, BPM, case management, AI technologies, both on the sense side. So how do I do, document ingestion? How do I do image recognition? How do I do natural language processing? As robotics technology, so how do I go out to some of these legacy systems that maybe don't have APIs, but I still want to involve in my automation process and actually pull the data and the transactions from those systems in? And then ultimately, how do I combine all that together with a low-code design experience that allows a business person, maybe in partnership with folks from IT, to actually design the business process they want from end to end, quickly deploy it, test it, iterate it, and make it better?
Now, I think the industry has termed the low-code, no-code business professionals as the quote-unquote citizen developers. I like that a little bit. I like the tinkerer, I guess you could say, moniker a little bit better. But I think that
we like to call them makers, right? Because I think that there's a DIY element of this that I think is really exciting for people to dig into. But I also think it's really, really important, especially at the enterprise scale, that this not just become another example of rogue IT, right? Like, we've been through enough rodeos. I've replaced enough Lotus Note systems that I do not want my career to be about building another Lotus Note system. I want to build something that is designed from the IT infrastructure to be much more scalable, reusable, to plug into the services to grow with the business, while still allowing the business on the other end to take more control of how those processes evolve and change over time.
So you referenced business professionals. Is there particular roles that Pegasystems focus on, or it doesn't matter? The role could be sales, it could be marketing. It doesn't really matter. The tools and the systems work for all.
Yeah, I mean, I think we focus on different areas for different parts of the business. So when we do a lot of what I call one-to-one customer engagement, which is really that real-time decisioning engine, we're generally talking to people in the marketing department, and we're also talking to people in the sort of data and analytics space, because we're doing a lot of work with how does an organization use their data to, in real time, better interact with their customers. When we talk about doing things around the process automation space, we're talking about the business leads of areas that tend to engage with customers in customer-centric processes. So think like customer service centers, people who are responsible for onboarding, people who are responsible for due diligence processes, regulatory processes, and then the various operations teams in the back office who are doing things like fulfillment and exceptions management, et cetera.
Got it. Well, I do want to bring because I've been asking a lot of questions. I want to bring my co-host in because they've been chopping at the bit here in the background. Let's go to Curtis first. Curtis?
Well, first of all, on the Lotus Note side, I can't believe that you don't want to build another fancy front-ended database that's primarily used for email. That seems a wasted opportunity. But with that out of the way, I do have a question. You've been talking about what you do. And so to help our viewers, our listeners, with what Pega does, do you think that you are more like a Salesforce or more like an SAP? I mean, do you go all the way into the, things like the supply chain to help manage what's happening on the shop floor?
That's a great question, Curtis. And a lot of ways, I actually think where we exist at our clients is between a Salesforce and an SAP. So in many cases, organizations have things like their CRMs and their front ends. And they have things like SAP that represent a lot of their big back end, their strong data store, some of their core foundational processes. And we kind of operate in the world of the center and connect out. So we provide processes that might connect a front-end customer experience back to the systems like SAP that fulfill it. Or we take data that lives in core systems and we use that to surface real-time insights into front-end digital channels like Adobe or Salesforce. So I think of Pega as sort of sitting between a lot of these systems as really the glue. We often talk about our architecture as working from the center out.
Okay, now I'm curious about something that you said right there, where you were talking about surfacing some of the insights into what's happening around the processes. So from your customer's point of view, how important does that seem to be? I mean, I understand how important it is to actually make the process happen, to be that sort of facilitating technology for the process. But the management and analysis of that process's effectiveness, how important is that aspect of it to your customer?
It's hugely important. One of the things, Curtis, that you were saying earlier that I thought was just really fascinating, and you were talking about a totally different field of IT, which is cybersecurity. But you were talking about the need to sort of connect what the technology can do to the outcomes of the business. And so much of what we do, and especially with that sort of process insight, is actually all about that. It's about how do I help? Hey, I've got technology. I've got 10 different REST calls that I'm making, and I'm firing a message up on an MQ to post a transaction back to my Kix mainframe, right? But at the end of the day, that's ultimately because I'm trying to onboard a new lending customer. And if I can do that, that's got a lifetime value impact to the company. So I want to be able to connect and show how that improvement of the process drives increased efficiency and ultimately, in some cases, increased revenue opportunities for the organization.
Very, very good. Well, I think it's fascinating to hear you talk about these different ways of bringing value to the organization. Because as you clearly say, facilitating things is one aspect. Helping the organization improve those processes is another. And I have to ask, especially when we get to the low code, no code part of a product like yours, you're dealing necessarily with people who I'm sure you would characterize as subject matter experts rather than development experts. But do you find that you have to train them in the process of building the technology solution so that they don't introduce a lot of inefficiency just by their lack of experience? Or does your system make up for their lack of experience and expertise in the tools it gives them to help build out those processes?
If I had invented a technology that completely eliminated the risk of poor human judgment, I'd probably be on a beach in Honolulu, not talking to you from a snowy house outside of Boston. But so there is always, right, going to be human judgment into this. What I think we focus on the technology on being able to do is I want somebody who's thinking about the process from a business side to be focused on that aspect of it. What are the individual steps that I need to do, whether it's from a regulatory perspective or a business perspective or a customer experience perspective? And how do I surface those most effectively in whatever new channels I'm communicating with my customers? Is it a chatbot, a contact center, a website, a mobile app? What I want my technology to be able to do in partnership, with the IT group at our clients is to manage all the other stuff at the bottom, right? I don't want that person thinking about containerization or the microservices or how data is being sourced or latency of a mainframe or a database that they actually need to pull this stuff from. I want to manage all of that on their behalf or empower the IT team to set that up and configure it on their behalf so that a business person is focused on the business outcome. IT person is focused on making sure that this aligns and connects into both their new and legacy architecture, because every organization has got some legacy that has to be dealt with, and meeting in the middle to ultimately deliver great outcomes to the business.
Very good. Brian, over to you.
Yeah, thanks. I'm an academic, and I actually have a degree in computer science, but I start wondering whether or not academia has lost touch with what's necessary in the industry. And I've been listening to a lot of people talking low code, no code. I'd like you to step to one side just a little bit. And is academia missing the target so often? Is that driving the low code, no code trend, or do you want to take a pot shot at that?
So I don't necessarily think that academia itself is driving the low code, no code trend, but I do have a comment on that I'll come back to. What I think is driving the low code, no code trend is a couple of things. One, I think, is the increasing prevalence of SaaS-based platforms or platforms as a service, where it's much easier and faster to actually just spin up technology solutions. I think you also have demographic shifts. My 9-year-old and my 12-year-old are downstairs, and they are building worlds in Minecraft. So we've got this increasing expectation of people who are coming into the workforce, right, with the idea of, hey, look, I can just assemble this stuff, right? I can just pull it together, right, just like I do on my iPhone. And I think there's also this increased appetite to help drive that. And then I think finally, you guys were talking again about the field of cybersecurity, but I think in general, there are not enough good engineers to build all of the applications, and especially the business-centric process applications that an enterprise needs. So that availability of this easier-to-use SaaS-based technology, the lack of the complete set or the number of development resources, and a growing dynamic of people who bring some comfort with computers into their day-to-day life, I think is opening the world for low code. To your academic comment, there was a great article written by a guy named C.P. Snow back in the 1950s, where he talked about the two cultures. And his point was that we've split science and humanities. They've become such separate disciplines that a scientist and an English professor couldn't talk to each other. I do think we run the risk of creating another two cultures, where we separate the computer science discipline so far from the business and philosophical ethical disciplines that it's designed to support. And we need, I believe, in the technology community, people who can sit and cross both of those.
Well said. Thank you. So obviously, Pega's doing something right. Can you share some of your success stories? What's working well?
So we get to work with great brands, right? So we work with organizations like Commonwealth Bank of Australia, and I love this company because one, they're a great partner, but they also really put their customers first. So they use our next best action technology, which is this sort of real-time decisioning based on data and AI models, to every time they interact with a customer, be it on the web, at a contact center, somebody hits the ATM, to make sure that they're having exactly the right conversation with them. So every conversation, they do this hundreds of millions of times a day with their customers. But the powerful thing that we've been able to work with them on is twice this year, or in 2020, they had to pivot on how they engage with their customers. First, when the Australian wildfires hit, and then again when COVID hit. And they were able, because the technology that we've worked with them to build is flexible, it's designed to change, they were able to almost on a dime change their conversations to the customers to move from, hey, what can we sell you, to, hey, we understand that there's a lot going on in the world. How can we support you? And that ability to do that, both through the technology, but also the empathy for their customers, the desire as a corporation to be there for their customers, was something that we were really proud to be a part of. Another example that came out of the COVID experience is we worked with the Bavarian government, and they, like a lot of governments, were being asked to make funds available. In this case, it was small business loans. And we worked with them using this low-code technology to deploy a system to handle the small business lending, take applications, process them through, and go live in just 5 days, right? So that ability to move quick and respond to people's needs, that was also really, really important.
Fantastic. Well, folks, all good things must come to an end. Thank you so much, Don, for being on today. We really appreciate it. We're running a little bit low on time, but I did want to give you a chance to tell the folks at home where they can go learn more about Pegasystems and maybe how they can get started using some of your solutions.
Well, check out Pega.com. There's demos on there. You can actually sign up and try it out. I got to get going, too. My son is evidently knocking on the door. It's Friday evening here, so he's looking for his dad. And then the other thing I would suggest is we've got our big annual event coming up. It's called Pega World, and you can easily remember the date because it's May the 4th, as in May the 4th be with you. So that's online, that's free, that's available to everybody, and you can register for Pega World Inspire now right at this beautiful screen that's up on the feed.
Fantastic. Thanks again. Well, we've done again, everybody. You've sat through another hour of the best dang enterprise podcast in the universe. So tune your podcatcher to TWiT. I want to thank everyone who makes this show possible. It's a team effort, and we really do have the best team in the market. Starting with my co-host. Now, we have to start with Mr. Curtis Franklin. He's busy in the security world. He's got lots to talk about, lots to write about. Curtis, what's going on for you in the coming week, and where can people find you and all your work?
Boy, I've got lots of research going on. I'm looking at everything from security architecting to figuring out new ways of thinking about certain aspects of enterprise security. So I've got some research going on there. That's one of the things I'm enjoying about my new role. I get to talk to a lot of people, do a lot of research, and it's a lot of fun. As for what I'm finding out, follow me on Twitter at KG4GWA. If you're on LinkedIn, I'm going to start publishing some of my stuff over on LinkedIn. So give me a follow over there. And as always, my bigger pieces can be found at darkreading.com under the little tab that says Omdia Research. So give a look over there when you get a chance. And as always, feel free to DM me with your comments. Would love to hear what you think about the world of security.
Thank you, Curtis. Well, we also have to thank Mr. Brian Chee as well. He's the Geek in Paradise for not much longer. Cheebert, where can people find you and get in touch with you online?
Well, I am ADVNETLAB, Advanced Net Lab on Twitter. Love to hear from you. I'm also Cheebert at twit.tv, but why don't you use TWiT at twit.tv, and that throws an email at all the hosts. Now, I will say next week, I've got Brian McHenry booked to take my place because I'm going to be flying from Honolulu to Orlando. And, the Geek in Paradise is going to be moving, and we're still nervous that we're going to forget to do something or change an address. It's really stressful moving, and this is a really, really big move. But thank you all for listening. And, if you want to know more about us, drop us a line. We'd love to hear from you.
Thank you, Cheebert. Well, we also have to thank you as well. You're the person who drops in each week to get your enterprise and IT news, right? Well, we want to make it easy for you to watch and listen to catch up on your IT enterprise news. Go to our show page right now, twit.tv/TWiT. There you'll find all the amazing episodes that we've done in the past, plus the show notes, the co-host information, the guest information, all the links we do, all the stories that we do during the show. But more importantly, next to those videos, you'll get those helpful subscribe and download links. Support the show by getting your audio version, your video version of your choice listed on any one of your devices, and use any one of your podcast applications, because we're on all of them, and we really, really want you to subscribe and support the show. It's really the best way to support the show and get your enterprise and IT news. After you subscribe, impress your friends, your family members, your coworkers with the gift of TWiT. I know I have, and they were really impressed with all the fun topics we talk about here on the show. And I can guarantee that your friends, family, and coworkers will be impressed too. So definitely reach out to them and share the show with them as well. Now, if you've already subscribed and you want to watch the show live, we do the show live here, 1:30 p.m. Pacific on Fridays. You can watch it at live.twit.tv. We can come see how the pizza's made. Come see the behind the scenes, all the banter that we do and the fun stuff we do during the show. Definitely check it out live. Plus, if you can watch the show live, you might as well jump into the chat room live as well. We have a great set of characters there right now, having great conversations. We get some awesome topics and some questions from them throughout the show. So check that out at irc.twit.tv. But don't worry. If you can't be part of the live stream, you're subscribed, but you can't be part of the live stream or the live chat, that's okay, because we still have a live discussion going on 24/7 over at the new twit.community website. It's a 24/7 discussion community forum where people discuss the shows, they discuss other tech topics, content, guests, all that type of thing. So definitely check it out over there. You can be part of the discussion and be part of the community, twit.community. Remember, you can always follow me, twitter.com/Lou. I'm there. I post all the latest and greatest enterprise tidbits, things about the show, so definitely check that out. And, of course, I have great conversations with people like you, so definitely come follow me, and let's have a great discussion. And just like Curtis said, feel free to DM me with any ideas about the show or about content you want to see, or even just topics you want to talk about. And if you also want to check out what I do during my normal work week, you'd also check out developers.microsoft.com/office. There we post all the latest and greatest ways for you to customize your Office experience, whether it's web add-ins or even the old traditional, COM add-ins and VBA stuff. We still support that stuff. So definitely check that out and see what it can do for you. I do want to thank everyone who makes this show possible, especially to Leo and Lisa. They continue to support This Week in Enterprise Tech each and every week, and we couldn't do the show without them. So thank you for all their support over the years. And also thank you to all the engineers and staff at TWiT. And of course, thank you to Mr. Brian Chee one more time, because he's not only our co-host, but he's also our tireless producer. He wears multiple hats in the game here, and he does all the bookings and the plannings of the show, and we really couldn't do the show without him. So thank you again, Chee, to you and all your support. Now, before we sign out, we also have to thank the man behind the curtain. And of course, one being our editor, Mr. Victor. Thank you for supporting us, making us look good. And of course, also Mr. Ant Pruitt. He's man of many talents, and I'll tell you one thing, a lot of the great shows that he does here on Twitter as well, you should definitely check them out. And what's going on for you in the coming weeks, and what kind of stuff's coming up here on Twitter?
Got some fun chats scheduled for hands-on photography, but I'd like for you folks to go ahead and hit the rating and subscribe on all of our podcasts out there. So go to Apple Podcasts, iTunes, and just give us a rating, give us a comment to help push us all up. Appreciate you.
I love that. Good idea. Well, until next time, I'm Louis Maresca, just reminding you, if you want to know what's going on in the enterprise, just keep TWiT.
Hey, folks, thanks for tuning in to another show here on the TWiT Network. If you are a fan of home automation, Internet of Things, and all things smart technology, you should check out my podcast, Smart Tech Today. I do it with Matthew Casanelli, and we have so much fun talking about all the latest news for all things smart tech.